Thursdays at 3 means Little Nessie happy hour. Happy Thursday, Ron.
Happy Thursday, Mr. King.
So
Happy
cheers
hour.
to you, fine sir. Well, hey, if I had to get that sip in, I don't think we have any viewers yet. We just went live, but if we do have any viewers, I've got a counter, but I don't think it's always accurate. But if you're watching this later, thanks for tuning in. Ron and I go live every Thursday on our Little Nessie channels, and we talk all things mortgage, real estate, economy, and AI, and sometimes a whole bunch of crap. But we usually rant, chat for about an hour, have a great time, have some drinks. McKenna, every now and again, our producer, chimes in when the topic might be relevant. So let's get to this week's topics. I've got a From the Gut this week. Usually I'll take about 8 to 10 minutes and talk about something that I've seen in the previous week or something that's trending or something like that. I think it was last week, the McDonald's CEO, he went viral for posting a video. And so I'm talking about language. It's actually kind of couples up with last week's From the Gut, where I talked about Jaume, a YouTuber with 7-ish million followers that's multilingual. So I'm staying on the language train this week. And then after that, we're going to get into 3 of our main topics where we usually spend about 8 minutes each. And then we've got about 3 or 4 rapid fire topics that usually we try to spend 3 to 4 minutes on those, but we usually go over. So our first main topic for this week, Ron, take the lead on these.
First one is inventory is a patchwork. Speaking about, it's from a Mike Simonson article, and he's the best by far. We're going to talk about inventory across the United States, how uneven it is, and what the implications are.
And then next,
we are using the title of inheritance as the new lane, but I think Inman suggested that is property the new caste system, and we're going to share some startling statistics, especially from California, but the implications of the housing market across the country from inheritance. And then this is really germane, and David, I hope you have that Ron's rant, drop. Swinging sign ready, because I'm sure I'll get on a rant. Mom and pop actually own, 90% of the rental property in the United States. And this is apropos to the, bill that just passed today in the, I think in the House and the Senate, whatever it's called, the one home road or whatever, one road home bill, the big housing bill. But anyway, we'll talk about it in a few minutes.
Some weeks most weeks I have a chance to look through and research and study the topics that Ron sends, but not every week, and not this week. So some of the stuff you're going to share is going to be new to me. So you'll get my live reactions to them. And then we're going to follow it up with a few rapid fire topics. But without any further ado, let's get to From the Gut. All right. So, like I said earlier, this week I'm talking about the language gap. Last week I talked about Jaume NYC. That's his YouTube handle, and like I said, he's got about 7 million followers. And I used him as an example to talk about language and what was the word I used? Fluency. But this week, talking about the McDonald's fiasco. I think it was last week when it went viral. So the CEO of McDonald's, Chris Kempczynski, I think, he posted a short video online. Nothing crazy. Just him sitting in what looked like could have been his office, could have been a conference room, don't know. But he was doing a taste test of McDonald's new burger. They call it the Big Arch. I haven't had one personally. So pretty normal marketing stuff, except the internet immediately started roasting it. And not necessarily in a mean way, more in a way that this is awkward kind of way. Because he takes this tiny little bite and then he starts describing the burger. but he doesn't call it a burger. He keeps calling it the product or a product. And you can almost feel the internet collectively just kind of squirm because he's technically not wrong. It is a product, but nobody in the real world talks about burgers like that. I've got a minute long video. It's shortened just a little bit of him of that video. McKenna, go ahead and play that, and then I'll keep going.
The big arch. This is something that we have tested already in Portugal, Germany, Canada. I love this product. It is so good. I'm going to do a tasting right now, but I'm going to eat this for my lunch. Here we go. First, holy cow. God, that is a big burger. We've got a very unique kind of sesame poppy sort of bun on it. We've got 2 quarter-pound patties, a delicious big arch sauce, and of course some lettuce. So, there's so much going on with this. First of all, let's try to get this thing. I don't even know how to attack it. Got so much to it. Oh, there's also some crispy onions on here as well. You see those kind of coming out. All right, the moment of truth. That is so good. That's a big bite for a big arch. It's distinctively McDonald's. Only McDonald's could do this type of burger, but it also is unlike anything else on our menu. It's a delicious product. You've got sort of the cheeses and the gooiness, but those crispy onions as well gives a nice texture. And of course, we've got the pickles. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of my lunch, but big arch, try it when you can get it.
So nobody walks into McDonald's and says, "Yeah, I'll take one of your hamburger products." And worse yet, in the days following this post, the competition responded. The CEOs of, I think it was the CEOs of both or of Burger King, Wendy's, and A&W joined in and posted their own videos of them trying their own burgers, not the McDonald's burger, but their own burgers. And they were specifically trolling McDonald's. They took real bites, actually showed them swallowing it, and poked fun at his use of the term product. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't really about the whole thing wasn't really about a burger. It was about language, or more specifically, the language gap, as I've called this from the gut. And I talked about language and communication last week with Xiaoma, multilingual YouTuber, over 7 million subscribers, and he makes great videos about language. In this instance, with the McDonald's CEO, I'm talking about the gap between how people talk in the boardroom, or maybe loan officer to loan officer or loan officer to real estate agent, versus how we talk to people in the real world. And when that gap shows up on camera, the internet immediately notices, like they did here. So the McDonald's CEO, he's obviously a smart guy. You don't become the CEO of a global company like McDonald's by accident. He lives in a world of investor calls, earnings reports, product launches, supply chains, market share. In that world, everything is a product. That's the language of the boardroom, and it fits. But the internet doesn't live in the boardroom. Customers don't live in the boardroom. The internet lives in the real world, where people say burger, where people say fries or milkshake, not products. In the moment these two languages collide, you can feel the disconnect. Now, this happens everywhere, not just in fast food. You see it in corporate marketing. You see it in politics. You see it in business. People start talking in words that make sense inside of their own world, but not outside of it. And we see this all the time in mortgage. We see people say things like leveraging synergies, maximizing value, enhancing the customer experience. And none of those phrases are technically wrong. They're just not how normal people talk. And when communication starts sounding like a slide deck, that's where trust starts to slip, because people connect with people, not presentations. This is something I think a lot about in marketing, especially with social media, because the entire point of social media is to sound human, or the entire point of marketing is to sound human, but a lot of professionals, whether it's loan officers or real estate agents, accidentally start speaking in industry language, mortgage language, finance language, corporate language, and the audience hears it and thinks, okay, this person knows their stuff, but they don't necessarily feel connected, because fluency isn't about influence, it's about relatability. Fluency means you understand the language of the room, and the language of the room changes depending on where you are. Investor meeting, you speak the language of numbers. A conference presentation, you speak the language of expertise. But social media, that's the language of more of conversation. The people who win in modern communication understand this instinctively. They translate, they don't dumb things down, they just say them in a way people actually speak. That's why some people feel natural on camera and others feel scripted. Not because one is smarter, but because one is fluent. Like my topic from last week, fluency. They know how to switch languages. And the funny thing is, if you watch that McDonald's clip, again, it's not that he looked necessarily uncomfortable, it's that he sounded like he was talking to investors while holding this burger. And that tiny mismatch, that little language gap is exactly the kind of thing the internet loves to pounce on, because people are incredibly good at detecting authenticity or lack thereof. We might not be able to explain it perfectly, but we feel it instantly. You know when someone's speaking naturally, and you know when someone's speaking like they're reading a memo. And the truth is, most communication problems aren't about intelligence, they're about translation. The smartest people in the room are usually the ones who can take complicated things and say them simply, not because they have less knowledge, but because they understand their audience. They understand the language inside of the room. And when you close that gap, when your message sounds like something a normal person would actually say, people lean in, they listen longer, they trust faster, because fluency builds connection and connection builds influence, which is why this whole thing with the McDonald's burger stuck with me. Not because it was embarrassing, but because it was a perfect reminder of something simple. You can be brilliant, you can be successful, you can be running a global company, but if the language doesn't match the room, people feel that gap. And the moment someone else walks in, actually speaking the language people actually use, that's the person they'll listen to. That's the person that'll earn their trust, and that's the person people will follow. Because at the end of the day, communication isn't solely about being correct, it's about being understood. There you go. That's my From the Gut.
David, another great job. I guess I have I don't know, a point or a question, or 2 points or questions. But the first thing is, for me, and I think a lot of people, the bigger gap wasn't the words, it was the image. That guy looks like he's never eaten a McDonald's hamburger in his life. I mean, it was weird seeing him like this is your first time. He doesn't even know how to hold it. And he certainly doesn't know how to take a bite out of it. Like, the image was more damning than his words, in my
Yeah. Yeah.
opinion. But
Well, I mean, I'm a fairly slender guy, have been my whole life, but I love McDonald's. My wife hates the fact that I do. I think it was all of the above. He didn't even know how to describe the bun that it was on. He was like this and this gooey and these seeds, and it was just all just kind of off.
yeah, even oh yeah, oh, look, it has onions, dude. Product, you know what you have. Like, it's not a
Right,
surprise. Oh,
right,
look, it has onions. But the second thing is, from my understanding, sales picked up significantly at McDonald's after this.
yep.
Where all publicity is good publicity.
Yeah,
You know,
there were a few angles that I thought about taking it, and that was one of them. there's no such thing as bad press, is one of those sayings, which I don't 100% believe. But yeah, their sales have increased. Have you tried? I don't think you really eat McDonald's, do you? I haven't had the big arch.
No, no. You know what? I gave up McDonald's as a New Year's resolution about 8 years ago, and I've never been back.
How often would you eat it?
I would, you know what, David? Sometimes on the way to work at like 4:30 in the morning, I'd stop by a 24-hour McDonald's and get the sausage McMuffin with egg because it's so
Yeah,
easy and so cheap. But
yeah,
that was my only habit around McDonald's, so I'm not a McDonald's,
right.
big fan.
Yeah,
But
I would
anyway,
say that's McKenna and I's one of our vices is McDonald's. We like it a little bit too much, and like I said, Kelly hates it when we pick it up, but she's gotten
what's your
over it.
go-to? What's your
Number
go-to?
one meal, Big Mac.
Same
I
thing
friggin'
with
love
McKenna.
Big Mac. Yeah.
I see McKenna as a fry, girl.
I mean, she eats her fries, but we get a combo, so it comes with the fries and a drink. But yeah, number one meal. She gets it medium size, I get it large size.
Well, good job.
Yeah. Let's move on. I need to grab my iPad because with my timer and all that stuff, I didn't have that set up. But let's move on to our first topic.
Let's go.
All right, got it.
And so this is an interesting topic because it's surprising. Matter of fact, the title of the article, which, like I said, Mike Simonson wrote this, and it was published in Housing Wire, and the title is "Why the Housing Inventory Map is So Startling," and that's really the case. And so let's just get to the map and see what we see because that's going to explain the whole topic. This map here is showing. It is showing housing inventory today compared to 2019. So, for example, Texas has 42% more inventory for sale today than it did 5 years ago or 6 years ago now. But it's one of the few states with more inventory. And there's plenty of states, say like Illinois, that has 68% less inventory than 2019. And thus, our title, inventory is very much, regional. And what's a bigger question, David, or bigger comment is, plenty of pontificators, I wouldn't call myself a pontificator, but me included, go, how can we have a, inventory shortage when we have surplus inventory everywhere, which is really a
Are
question.
we?
But that obviously was not well, educated, comment because truly inventory is lacking most places in the country still. There's still big minuses. And keep in mind, the population has grown by like 10% in 6 years. And so not only is there this deficit from 2019, but we're not accounting for population growth, which is even a bigger problem. But what on this map? Anything on this map startle you, David?
Well,
Or
I
let's not do
remember.
another
I remember.
geography test.
What's that?
I said let's not do another geography test this week.
Yeah, McKenna gave me a hard time after that one last week. Um, I, I remember seeing this map. I I thought this map showed the influx or the amount of people leaving a state or moving into a state, not inventory.
That could have been a
Are we
different
sure this
map.
is right?
I'm 100% certain this is right. 100%. This is the map of David. I'm not saying there's not the map that you saw, but that's not the map we're looking at. This is housing inventory 2019 compared to 2020, 25. I mean,
Yeah,
100%.
because
Yeah.
I saw a similar map that I thought were similar numbers. And because, there's so many people moving out of California, moving to Texas and other places that I thought that was similar, which would tell you that there's more inventory in California because of the influx of people moving out.
Yeah, they're. By the way, yep. This is not a net migration map, but you bring up a really good point because the question really is, what is keeping inventory from hitting the market, right? And Mike Simonson in his article, he said there's two issues. First is affordability, right?
Hmm.
Because people are afraid to move up, which is not allowing them to release their houses for sale. So it's
Hmm.
affordability. But the other thing that he says, which is a really interesting point, is part of what you said. There's also what he calls the great stay. People aren't moving. They're not moving. And even out of California, David, which still has a negative net migration, the numbers are minuscule compared to previous years. because more than anything, people are frozen in place. And there's really, Mike calls out two reasons why people are frozen in place. And the first one, as I already mentioned, was affordability. The other one was job security. If there's an abundance of jobs, and if there's a thing they track about job jumpers. Do they get a higher wage than the people of their company? And job jumpers get a higher wage, like we saw in 2020, 2021. There's a lot of migration. But when that gap narrows, or there's not a lot of jobs available, people stop looking for jobs, and then they're not going to move. And it used to be that actually changing jobs used to be one of the number one factors for migration. And now that's almost dead in the water. And so that's also keeping, inventory down.
So what's the number one reason for migration now?
Well, the migration's gone to stop to a crawl. Matter of fact, I think it's actually going to show us in the next slide migration statistics. I think, if I remember.
Take a look at that.
Oh, this is hiring rates, which leads to migration, 100%. But migration, David, Mike speaks to it, how he calls it the great state. There are fewer people leaving, and there's fewer people moving in. And he said, he has a statistic. I'm not going to look it up, but it's like crazy how few people are moving compared to normal. Normally, by the way, 1 in 5 people move. That I know historically. And now it's like, instead of being 25%, it's 8%.
Wow.
It's like really low.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of that has been because of the whole new evolution of work from home.
Yeah. Yeah. But you got to remember, work from home drove the migration to begin with. People fled the cities and went into the suburbs, for cheaper houses in the 2020s.
Right. And now a lot of people have made those life decisions to move somewhere that they really wanted to, because they could work from home anywhere in the world. And now it's just stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. It's stuck. There's all sorts of reasons for it being stuck, but it's stuck. But the overall point, there are many places that are woefully short of inventory. It's like 36% of the states have less inventory today than in 2019.
Wow.
Which is an exponential problem because we've got population growth. So it's twice as bad as that number sounds. But anyway, there's something to keep in mind, and it's very regional. And the whole point is, if you're serving a client, in Texas, they're having a totally different experience than if you're serving a client in Illinois or Connecticut, right? It's a totally different, landscape, and you just need to be cognizant of that when you're advising them, so that your advice matters.
Right. What's the random thought / question? What's the replacement rate for homes for builders? You know how, like, for humanity, we've got a replacement rate that you need to be at. I think it's like 2.5 or something like that to have a healthy population. What's the replacement rate for houses?
Well, when you're talking replacement rate, the way you're saying it, are you saying for houses that are being taken out of the inventory? Like, there's some percentage of houses that are decayed or, destroyed. And I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's something like that, David. It's something like 3 or 4%, 3%. You're right. You're right on beat there.
You didn't have a statistic when I asked you. That might be a first.
No, I don't remember. I've certainly seen it plenty of times, but I don't know. But maybe I'll get the answer before we get done.
I think that was all of our slides. Yeah.
Let's keep going.
All right, let's talk about inheritance next.
I really like this topic, and it really stemmed originally from a Wall Street Journal article. And the title of the article is in California, about the only way to get a house is to inherit one. And then all sorts of publications picked that up, including Inman. And they had even a more offensive title, California Housing, a caste system defined by family wealth. Analysts respond to report. So there's a lot to unpack here. First, let's kind of go through the data. Here's what's crazy, David. 18% of all property transfers in California last year were from inheritance.
18%?
So 60,000 homes in California passed hands through inheritance, right? And just to give you an idea, that's up from 12% the previous high in 2019, and it's double the national average of 8.8%. So it's a real deal, although it's a problem everywhere. And so we could talk about California specifically, but it's really a problem everywhere. Yeah, and thanks, McKenna. This is the orange on the bottom is houses that are inherited. All right, and so there you can see versus resales or new sales, and so inheritance, as you can see, is growing. Now, California has a whole bunch of conditions that create this problem or create this phenomenon. The first is Prop 13, which caps property taxes. David, are you familiar with Prop 13?
No.
So you buy your house, that's the basis for which your property tax is set. And it's set at 1.25%. Depending on what county you're in, it can vary by a few tenths of a percent. But say 1.25%. It can only, the max it can increase any 1 year is 2%, not 2% of what you're paying. So if you're paying $1,000, the max that it can increase is $20. It can only increase 2%, right? So but think of it, your house is appreciating greater than that. Your house is appreciating 5% a year on the total value, not 2% on your tax bill. And so the gap between what you're paying and what fair market people are paying gets gigantic, right? It could be 10x. Like I could be paying, if I bought my house 25 years ago, I could be paying $2,000 a year. And the person in the identical house right next to me could be paying $20,000 a year. Like it's a big deal, right? So that's one of the reasons why seniors aren't giving up their houses, because they get the property tax becomes so inexpensive. The next thing that happens in California for most counties, there's a parent-child transfer that allows if the parent transfers a house to the child gets to keep their parents' property tax basis.
Oh, wow.
This is a huge thing. This is a really huge benefit because they're going to buy that same house like I spoke to. They're going to spend 10 times the amount on property taxes than what you otherwise would be paying. But here's a real kicker. Here's a real problem. Here's what created this issue right now. And this isn't a California problem. But if I'm a senior, let's say I'm 70 and I want to sell my house, well, I'm going to have the capital gains on that house. Let's say I bought my house 30 years ago for $100,000, and now in California it's worth $1.5 million, right? So I got $1 million for equity in the house or gain in the house. Well, I can take my $500,000 exclusion if I'm married, right? So I still have to pay capital gains on $900,000, right? That's 20%. And in California has additional capital gains, right? But that's 20%. So 20% on that $900,000, I'm going to have to pay $180,000 in taxes. And I'm going to go, as a senior, I don't want to. But if I die and the house goes through my probate or my estate and transfers to my child, they now get it at fair market value with no tax, with zero tax. So you avoided that entire tax. And so all these Californians, and by the way, the average price for home in California, I think, is over $1 million. And the average amount of equity that the average California has is $600,000. And so their play is, if I hold on to the house, one, it's less expensive than if I downsize or went someplace else. Two, I'm avoiding my taxes on it, and my kids are going to get a whole, and my kids can get my tax rate. And so that's keeping seniors from selling their house. All those things are keeping seniors from selling their house. And so what's happening then is that's preventing, let's say, 10% of those homes, if 60,000 homes pass through inheritance, and that's twice the national average, right? Then what? 30,000 homes would have been for sale for people like you and I could have bought. But because of the way that the government structured the incentives for people to hold on their houses, they aren't selling them. What do you think about that?
I've got a thought or a question. I think Trump floated the idea of eliminating property tax for people over 65. Is that right?
Possibly.
I think he did. Let's say it happens. I think that's what was floated. I haven't heard about it in about a week, but what would that do to the market? What kind of impact would that have?
David, I don't know if that would substantially change the market. You know what a lot of economists think would actually fix this problem?
What?
Is if you waived capital gains for seniors. If you just said, look, we're going to match this to what it would be in your estate. Now, maybe that's if you're 70 or there's some rule. But if we remove that capital gain, then the seniors no longer have to hold on to that house to try to minimize the expense for their estate, and that might actually get properties moving.
Gotcha. All right. Any last thoughts on that one?
We're good. That's good.
All right, we're moving along. Mom and pop own rentals. What's this one about, Ron?
Yeah, let's really rant and rave about this, David. And let's go back. So we all know the current news, that we all know that the 21st Century Road to Housing Act passed the Senate today. It had previously passed the House. Now it has to go to reconciliation, but it's passed. And in that bill, last moment, really was the last moment, the House added, look, they originally excluded, it says, so that's what it says, people that, I think it's people, investors that own more than, I don't remember, it's 100 properties. Is that what that is? The cutoff is 100 properties. People that own more than 100, institutions that own more than 100 properties can't own more rental property. They can't, they're forbidden from buying it, right? But they excluded build to rent. So if you got new construction, like if you wanted to go buy the whole community, right, you build it to rent, they excluded the builders. They also have some other exclusions, like if you bought a house and did significant home improvements, then that would also count, wouldn't count against you. But in the most recent bill, they added a kicker. However you acquired it, if you acquired it under our rules, you still have to be disgorged of it in 7 years. Meaning, I don't care if you bought the house, the whole community is built to rent, you have to get rid of that property within 7 years. And so that's going to be a giant incentive for these large investor companies to get out of, the investment property, single family residence investment property. You go, gosh, who cares? That's exactly what we want. We want them out of that. We want them out of that so that other people can buy those homes. Well, here's the problem, David. What's going to happen? Nobody's going to build those homes. Builders aren't just going to build those homes hoping somebody's going to buy it someday. When you have investors willing to buy those homes in advance, fund them, then a builder takes away risk and they can build these communities, which actually injects more inventory into the marketplace. It's a critical function of a healthy marketplace for us today. And without that, the builders simply won't build those units. So they don't go to the more deserving family, which is what the intention is. The other thing is builders these investors, whether it was the investors in 2008, that absolutely 100% saved the housing market by creating a floor, by buying, distressed properties en masse, or whether it's the investors that are buying distressed properties that need a whole lot of, maintenance and renovation, and they're doing it affordably and keeping inventory stock in place still, or now this built to rent where they're helping drive new construction. They have been critical factors in our housing economy, in our market. And so taking them out, to me, seems like a bad idea. But here's getting back to our topic, David. That was my rant. I'm off my rant. Getting back to my topic, it's idiotic anyway. And let's go ahead and look at the two charts we have, or two screens we have
Ron,
here.
can I just ask something real quick?
Yeah, please.
How significant is this? Because when like a month ago or so, when Trump brought out the whole new thing, eliminating these investors, or not eliminating, but I forget exactly. But didn't it just kind of come to light that that only represents about 1% of homes out there, or something like that, 1 or 2%?
Yeah. We're going to get to that, David. It's one of our slides coming up.
Oh, okay.
So let's table that. So let's go to the first slide. Here's the first thing. Here's the percentage of non-owner occupied houses across the country by state. So, for example, California has 16.8% of their inventory is non-owner occupied or investment. Texas, 17.9, Florida, 18.0. You get the idea here. Colorado, 20%. And historically, about 20% of housing is inventory. Now, here's something else, David. Here's what's really crazy. Like this slogan, houses are for people, not for corporations. Who the hell do you think lives in the house? You think it's the CEO? You think it's the frickin', receptionist? Who do you think lives in that house? It's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Now, so we're going to say, hey, all you renters living in these single family residences, get the hell out. Get the hell out. We don't care. You go live wherever you're going to live. We're going to sell it to somebody else. Genius. This is so genius in my mind, right? And so somebody's going to have to explain this to me, dude, because I cannot understand it for the least bit. Because here's what happens. Let's say that an investor invests into a new community, a build-to-rent community. The people that move there aren't ready to own a home yet, right? But they still want to have the benefits of that type of house. Where else are they going to get it? They don't want to live in some project someplace, right? They want their kids to grow up in a single-family residence. The investors provide that opportunity that isn't otherwise available, and this bill does nothing to solve that, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm getting off my topic.
I'd love to. I think a lot of people might argue with you, and we've got a handful of people watching right now. If you've got a comment, if you would argue against Ron on that, throw it in the comments, and we'll see if we can respond to it. But Ron, it sounds like you're kind of taking the opposite approach of the popular headlines out there right now, and people might argue with you.
Well, David, as is NAR, as is the National Association of Home Builders, as is every major organization, is 100% against this whole rental part of this bill. 100. Now they want all the other. The 90% of the bill is great, by the way. A lot of good choices to drive more construction. I totally support it. Totally support it. But this one feature is really self-defeating, in my opinion. And then let's look at the next slide. And by the way, we might be able to go to McKenna and just get an opposite view. We don't have to go to the audience. So here's your point, David. It depends on how you define, large landlords. If you define it as 1,000 properties or more, there's only 1.6%. And so depending on how you define it, but any way you chop it, mom and pop investors own 90% of the investment property.
Wow.
And by the way, which I don't know. I'm gonna quit ranting on this, but it's interesting to look at. It's timely because of the bill passing today. The bill's going to have problems in reconciliation. I wouldn't be surprised if that 7-year disgorgement rule drops out of the bill, honestly, because they're getting heavy lobbying. But I can only just say, I can't say enough how critical and what a savior those investors have been to the housing market when it's been in distress. And thankfully, including, in 2023, 22, 24, when new construction would have slammed closed, except for, even though it doesn't seem like a lot, those, investors that now committed to buy into those, construction projects that weren't going to sell, kept the builders liquid, kept the machine flowing, kept it fully working versus having to downsize and lay off and delay. But anyway, any other thoughts on this, David? I think I've gone through a rant on this official.
No, I mean, I'm very easily swayed and convinced, and you just convinced me. But what the people on the other side, what's their main argument?
Well, this originally came from Elizabeth Warren, and for her, she just kind of hates, I don't mean to speak for her, but she sees corporations as evil, profit as evil, that they're all taking advantage of people. Now, that's one of the things that she's had, on her platform that somewhat resonated with, I think the populace. So the president picked it up because he's trying to pick up votes. He's also trying to do the right thing. I'm not trying to be cynical. But I honestly, this whole thing, houses are for people, not corporations. Dave, I don't even know how to argue the other side of I don't even know how to make an argument on the other side of the argument. Because some things like you just go, on its face, it's stupid, right? You go like, how can, like sometimes I go, I may be right, I may be wrong, people could be reading this wrong. I do not see how this creates more inventory for anyone in the United States, actually.
Yeah. McKenna can vouch for me here, but both McKenna and my wife, Kelly, give me a hard time all the time because I just love to take the devil's advocate approach and just argue. Even if I don't believe in the other side, I just like to argue both sides.
It'd be fun to talk about the whole devil's advocate sometimes.
In what way?
Well, no, let's not do it here because we're going to run way behind. It's an interesting concept if you understand it.
Okay, you'll have to just the general sense of playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the devil's argument.
Right.
Yeah. We'll cover it. We won't cover it on time. Let's not cover it here.
All right. Rapid fire topics. Number 1. McKenna's gonna want to chime in on this one.
Oh, that's perfect. Let's go to the first slide, and McKenna, join in if you want. So this is pretty interesting. You know, women accounted for 5 times the new jobs over men in 2025. Isn't that really interesting? Now, part of it is because it's skewed towards the work sectors that actually had growth, healthcare, education, are more women supported or women driven, dominated. And the sectors that shrank, construction and government, are
Mm.
more men dominated. And that's how we got to this. It wasn't by desire. It's really kind of by, was your industry, did it grow or did it shrink? And the industries that really support women grew. The industries that support men shrank, and that's how we got to this number. But it's a really interesting number. McKenna, did you have feedback on this?
Why do you think it was so different last year than the previous years?
We've had so many industries like government, like we lost 330,000 government jobs last year,
Yeah.
and those are dominated by men. And then
Yeah.
you saw an increase of 800,000 jobs in education and healthcare, and those are dominated by women. It's as simple as that.
I mean, a win is a win in my books. Hell yeah, women.
Go women. Yeah, because and this is, I mean, part of the reason why this was published is because it was Women's History, or it is Women's History Month, and so that's how this came about. And women are making inroads, which is great. They're also finally making inroads in equal pay. Still a little bit behind, but making inroads, which is critical. That's another thing I don't understand. But but good for them, and they're dominating job creation. So great.
I mean, yeah, there isn't really much more that I can add aside from, hell yeah, women. Go get it.
Other than go women.
Go women. I prefer hell yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. Hell yeah. Well, hell yeah. I think we did that. We think we got that done.
All right. I don't think I have any further thoughts on that one. Next up, rapid fire. Let's keep these going.
Let's go. This is an interesting topic. The driveway is a signal, and let's go to the map. This may be surprising. The best-selling cars by state. Does that surprise you, David?
Very much so. I didn't think Ford was that dominant.
Yeah, it's more dominant this year than last year. But you know what's interesting? I did a post last year on this, and I tried to figure out, what does the car that you own reveal about you as a possible home buyer or homeowner? And so I played around with it for a bit, and I came up with some hypothesis, and I created a LinkedIn post. And so I saw it this year, and I kind of approached it the same way, but I went a little bit deeper using Gemini, doing some research in Perplexity. And so I try to come up with a bigger model of what this means. And what I really linked to, I did 5 variables. It was what the car you drove, what was the cost of homes in your state, what was the average income, and there was a homeowners. I used 5 variables to come up with how likely were you to own a home based on the car that you drive. And there was actually a statistical, connection to that. For example, in California, homeownership is wherever. Let's put it this differently. So here's what's really interesting, because we also check gas prices. So where electric cars are most popular are some of the states with the lowest home ownership. And so you go, why is that? Because, why is that? Because is it because the homes are most expensive in those states? And really what it came up to, even though, by the way, the highest percentage of homeowners owning electric vehicles are in those states, which is counterintuitive, right? But it has to do with utilitarian, meaning when it's also those states have the most highest gas prices. And so what we ended up, hypothesizing was that where you had a super high cost of living, super stretched DTI, really high gas prices, that the car you pick is a car that best insulates you against all those forces. And so people in high gas states that don't have necessarily a whole bunch of residual income, they pick the most affordable car, and for them that's an electric car. But it tells you then that in those states, what happened then is those states are high wage, high fuel, and lower home ownership. which is really interesting. Now, it's not complete connection, but it was an interesting trend. And then what was very interesting is that, you know, in lower wage states with low fuel costs and low cost of living, people could buy whatever car they wanted. And whenever they could pick whatever car they wanted, they typically picked a comfortable Ford. Isn't that really interesting? Is kind of what all these data points came up to. And then where you had, and so you had high wage and moderate fuel, right? In that circumstances, you picked a really efficient car. You picked like a RAV4, or you picked a Honda or a Toyota, right? Because that you had enough to buy something, but you didn't have enough to go crazy, and you didn't have to necessarily sacrifice. So you picked a mid-range. And so we started to be able to extrapolate what are homeowners' characteristics based on the car they bought. Now, there was also some regional things about, culture of trucks and whatnot, but it was really interesting. And so when you look at the map, do you see any correlation here with anything?
It'd be interesting if you took the two with Tesla on there, because that's obviously electric. But if you took those out of there, what's a correlation between home ownership? If you compare Ford, Honda, Chevrolet, Toyota, what would be the correlation between those and home ownership?
Well, what's interesting, Tesla owners had the highest home ownership rate, which is another interesting thing, even though in the states where they dominate is low home ownership rates. And you're right, it's distorted because there's so many variables: this gas price, wages, home prices, and we try to look at all that stuff. But it was interesting to see, though. There's definitely the interesting part is which it really showed in low wage, low cost states. People typically have enough cushion to buy the car they want, and they typically have higher home ownership rates.
Right.
That was kind of like the bottom line to it,
Gotcha. All right. Let's move to our final rapid fire topic, where we're talking about jargon.
Yeah, and let's just say we go through the topics before we come on, and this one generated a lot of internal conversation because we completely didn't agree. We didn't even understand the topic, but this was also from a Wall Street Journal article. The title of the article is "Leverage, Reach Out, Circle Back: The Corporate Jargon We Hate the Most," like the buzzwords we hate the most, and it listed probably, I want to say, 30 different words that we hate the most. It highlighted maybe 10 of them. We picked a handful that we thought were kind of obnoxious. You may or may not agree. The argument, David, we had is, are these obnoxious, or are these just efficient, effective words to explain the situation? And we disagree. You and I didn't disagree. We probably disagree with the author. These were probably useful words, but let's see what the audience thinks.
Was this based off a study, or this was just the author's opinion?
No, it was readers' responses. So the Wall Street Journal put out, "Hey, let us know if any, do you have any jargon at work that you can't stand?" And then they got, people writing in. And so there wasn't any statistical data to it. It was very anecdotal. But the things like, we picked out, bandwidth, which translates into time and capacity. And they use examples like, "Hey, I just don't have the bandwidth to do that." It's like, "Hey, I'm just too busy, boss. I don't stack more thing on me." Or unpack that, means, "Okay, like, how many times do we meet? Let's go ahead and unpack that." Like, really? I can see how that could frustrate somebody. Take a 10,000 foot view. Well, what's my normal view? Is it 1 foot? Is it 100 foot? Is it 5,000 feet? Like, what's normal, and what does 10,000 foot mean, right?
I think this is just an article written by a grumpy person that has a bone to pick with language. Going back to my from the gut.
Do any of these things bug you? Any of these words?
The only one that I could never see myself saying is soup to nuts. I don't think I've ever used that term in my life. All of the other ones, I'm like, that's just how you say it.
Yeah, I mean, I use bandwidth. I go juice is not worth the squeeze probably about 100 times a day. I use pivot, move the needle. Now, when I use reach out, I'm not trying to use jargon. I'm saying I'm gonna reach out to somebody, but I guess I can set them in contact them, I guess. Yeah, this didn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you want to see the article, I mean, there's some vitriol in the article about people like having visceral, like when my boss says, unpack that, I want to barf all over the place. I can't hate that. I hate that guy. Like, why doesn't he just say, let me explain it to you?
This article just annoys me.
I know, we don't have time. McKenna, you got any thoughts on this? Nope. She's in the corner.
I do. I agree. I think that this was just written by some grumpy person. This is just I would say for most of these, this is just how people talk. Like, I don't know. I think people just like to complain, especially with ones like reach out or bandwidth or unpack that. Like, why do you have such an issue with it?
I agree, McKenna. And I also going back, David, to your from the gut, there is like euphemisms that we use that drive me bananas, especially around layoffs or cost reductions, right? Like we're going to right size. Yeah, we're going to lay off half our people. Like, but these aren't euphemisms. So euphemisms are more tend to irritate me more than if this is indeed called jargon.
Yeah. All right.
We didn't kill that, but let's move on. It's dead anyway.
Dead. All right, let's move on to our AI tip of the week. This one's interesting.
David, I found this one really interesting, and I know you do. And I know you may be a bit of a doubter, not that I'm not a doubter, but and this should be this tech. We're just talking about tech stuff. And so, McKenna, I think we have a screen. So this is really interesting. So Zoom is rolling out personal avatars. And what that means is that they now believe that they can capture your image, your voice, your facial mannerisms, and that they can now have your avatar show up in a meeting instead of you. And you can pick actually a lifelike avatar, or you can pick a cartoon avatar. Like you can pick whatever you want, but that can now represent you in a meeting. And if we're going to talk about the implications in a second, but if we go to the next slide, it just explains to you what they're rolling out, and they're super excited about it. I mean, those are like, woohoo! And apparently this they announced it last year. They've been working on it for years. Photorealistic avatars that can mimic your appearance, expressions, and lip and eye movements, designed to meme your actions when you're not on camera ready. So this is crazy. And by the way, the guess is that Zoom's going to roll this out across other platforms, not their own external platforms. So they're going to make this a service, like some sort of service for people. But I don't know about you, David. If I was leading a meeting and 2/3 of the people were avatars, I would probably cancel the meeting and start, downsizing. What's your view on that?
I've got a handful of thoughts on this one. Number one, I'm actually surprised that Zoom is just now bringing this out, because Microsoft Teams had a similar feature. It wasn't a photorealistic avatar, but it was like the one that you see on the screen here on the top left, where it's almost like a cartoon. And so they've had that for a while. And best of my knowledge, I'm pretty sure Zoom is the leader in the space. I'm not sure. So I'm surprised they're just now coming out with it now. Second of all, you've got AI avatars being used all over social media and for today and for training courses and that kind of stuff. And I don't hate it. I don't mind it one bit. But when it's a Zoom call, that's totally different. When it's a face-to-face call where it could be a meeting, it could be an interview, it could be whatever. For me, that bothers me a little bit. Again, so avatars and social media, I don't mind them. I like them actually sometimes. But yeah, this one I think this one might fall flat, especially if it's not very, very good. Because we all know, we've seen, unless you've got like a Hollywood budget where you can produce AI that is 100% believable, most of the over-the-counter AI avatar technologies right now, you can tell. It's very impressive, but you can still tell. And so I think it might fail. I'm not sure. I think they're putting too much stock in this.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, what do the avatars say?
Well,
Are you
they
typing?
mimic you. No,
No.
I think.
Okay,
Go
you're
ahead.
in a corporate meeting. Who's in favor of us firing the marketing department? My avatar is going to answer that for me, or am I typing out a script for my avatar?
No. You'd basically still be on the call just like we are right now. But you would see my avatar, and as I'm talking, my avatar is synced up 100% to my words. That's how I
Because
understand it.
yeah, I don't know, because they say they've also mimicked. I mean, they've been able to capture your voice, so it's not me speaking; it's the avatar speaking. So how's the avatar getting my thoughts?
Hmm.
We don't know. We're going to learn this, but aside from that, David, it's very much like, and I'm gonna be old man here, but look, if you can't be on camera for having a Zoom meeting, then don't go to the meeting. Like, get the hell off the camera, and then explain to me why you can't be on camera. And if it's because you're folding clothes and making dinner, well, explain to me why you're working from home. You know, I know this
Right.
hardcore not going to be a popular view, but this is just an extension of that, which I fully can't understand. And I'm all for
Yeah.
avatars, as you know.
Yeah.
They have a proper place, but I can't imagine holding a meeting. Can you imagine having like a board of directors meeting? Half the people are avatars. I can't even imagine that.
Hmm. I Maybe there's something mechanic can weigh in. I think there'll be a big difference in how men react to it versus women, because women just, naturally, or whatever, women, it takes more time for them to get ready for work with hair. With most women put on makeup. No offense if you don't or whatever, but women take longer to get ready. So I could see women using it more than men, for the sake of like, I don't want to have to do my hair, do my makeup to get on this 15-minute call. So I could see that possibly happen. McKenna.
I was about to warn you with
Uh,
where are you going with this?
Me too. I was going,
And
danger,
what do you
danger.
think?
No,
Yeah.
no, no, no. On that side, I could definitely see it. But my main concern is also kind of what Ron was saying, and I didn't understand it in the way that you were saying it. And I was thinking, like, how is the avatar going to know what I would
How to
say on like
respond?
how to respond? Like if it was someone like if it was an avatar just using my voice and I'm actually in the meeting dictating, then that makes more sense. But if it's not, then that would be kind of concerning. Because what if the avatar says something that I don't agree with? That was my concern, but depending on how it ends up.
Yeah. You know, another thing that's absurd. I mean, you're seeing more and more where people actually have meetings where everybody's in the office, but they're dialing in on Zoom or MS Teams instead of going to the conference room so they can multitask. Well, now we can have them do that using an avatar. Like, holy smokes. Either you got to cancel the meeting or fire people, like one or the other. Like, if your meetings aren't interesting enough to get people to show up or have enough value, quit having the meetings. And if they are valuable and there's the one person quits showing up, fire them. I just don't get this. But anyway, there you go.
I would be surprised if this new product from Zoom is if the avatar is doing the thinking and responding and rationalizing on your behalf. I'd be surprised. What I understood it to be is just like you were talking right now. It would still be your thoughts, your words, just the visuals would be the avatar.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just curious how they're going to do that. Do I talk into my microphone and then in the avatar's ear and the avatar speaks for me? It's like the United Nations, you know?
Mm.
with-
Right, right. Anywho, that's all we got for you today. It was a fun one. If you've been watching or if you watch this later, we appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, head to our YouTube page, our Little Nessie YouTube page, and subscribe. We go live every week, and we sometimes take shorts from these videos and post them there and other stuff. So appreciate you watching. Ron, any last words?
Nope. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. If you guys give us a little bit of your time, we appreciate it. Dave, good job. McKenna, good job.
Cheers to you. See you next week. Cheers.